Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Andrea, and I'm the Climate Engagement Lead at the Biosphere Institute of the Bow Valley. We're a Canmore-based nonprofit organization, and our mission is to empower community leadership on environmental challenges. So I'm really excited to be here today hosting this event on electric vehicles and in the building and development community. This is part of our event series on zero emission vehicles. And I also wanted to thank the Bow Valley Builders and Developers Association for helping us and partnering with us. We have Ian on the line from BODA today and a couple of excellent speakers. I will just go through a couple housekeeping things. And I also wanted to thank our funders, Natural Resources Canada and the Town of Canmore, for making this specific event possible. So you will have noticed this event is being recorded, and just an FYI that if you're not comfortable putting your face on the screen during the Q&A portion, you're welcome to engage with us during the chat. We will just be sharing this with BODA members, so it won't go too far in the public. I also wanted to acknowledge that I'm all joining you today from Treaty 7 territory, which is the traditional and ancestral lands of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. And I'm curious where everyone else is joining from today too. So I'm just going to share a quick poll. So you'll see it pop up on your screen. If you could just answer if you're joining us from Banff, Canmore, elsewhere in the Bow Valley, elsewhere in Alberta or Canada. We'll get a sense of where our attendees are from today so that our speakers get a sense of who you are. Just give you a few more seconds. Looks like most people have filled it out. And looks like most of us are joining from Canmore, but we do have a couple others from elsewhere, so welcome. I'm also wanting to know what profession you are. So if you're joining as a builder developer in the other professional services, or you're just an interested citizen, this will just give our speakers a good sense of who you are. And while you're filling that out, I will mention that the Biosphere has a number of other events on zero emission vehicles coming up. I really encourage you all to check out our website. I'll put it in the chat, biospherinstitute.org/events. Most exciting, we have an electric vehicle expo coming up on May 28th, which will be a really fun event and for you all to attend. So please check out our upcoming events. We also have some webinars as well, in addition to this one. Okay, it looks like most people have filled out who they are. So we have actually quite a mix, which is interesting. So we have a few developers, a builder, professional services, supplier, trades, an interested citizen. So it looks like we have a bit of a mix today, which is amazing. Okay, great. So I think I'm going to pass it over to our speakers, and they're going to introduce themselves. They will present, and then we'll have an opportunity, I hope, for a substantive question and answer. So feel free to turn off your mics and cameras for this portion and just eat your lunch and enjoy. And I think I'll just pass it over to you.
Well, thanks very much, Andrea. And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us on your lunch. We're really quite pumped that we've got such a great interest from the developers here in the Bow Valley and others with regards to electrification of transportation and electric vehicles. So we hope that we pique your interest a little bit today, that we stimulate some questions maybe for after the presentation, and that somewhere down the road in your building and developing that you include charging for electric vehicles. So of course, a lot of this conversation is going to be about the charging infrastructure for EVs, because of course, in buildings, that's primarily the key thing here. But of course, what I'm going to start talking about is a little bit more towards the history of electrification of transportation, just a little bit, just to try to bring you up to speed very quickly as to where we are with that. And I hope that one of the takeaways today is that you realize, and maybe you already understand, but that the electrification of transportation is coming quickly. It's here to stay, and it is not just going to be about cars and the light duty vehicles that we drive today, but it's going to be about transit and school buses and everything that moves, basically, ultimately. But today we're going to focus on cars. And so just a little bit about myself. I've been a car guy all my life, spent my first corporate years working in car rental and working for Budget and Thrifty. About 12 years ago, I took a little bit of a right turn and got involved in the nonprofit sector, and specifically with an organization called Plug and Drive in Ontario. Plug and Drive was set up as a nonprofit. We don't sell cars there. The role was strictly public education about electric vehicles. Of course, it was supported by the manufacturers, the charging infrastructure people, the electrical sector. We started out 12 years ago just doing roadshow. Not a lot of fun in February, standing in a parking lot trying to talk to people about EVs. And so about 5 years ago, built a center, 6,000 square feet, and that's where the people could come and visit. It's all for free, and learn all about EVs. Last year, my wife and I decided to sell everything in Ontario, and we moved out to the beautiful Bow Valley here and have made it our home. We brought along with us our 2018 Nissan Leaf. It's our only car. I'd like to say that I drove it from Ontario to here, but that would be a lie. I could have, but it might have taken me a little while to do it. And not that the infrastructure isn't there, but it would have been possible, but we didn't have that kind of time. So we stuck it on the train, cheated a bit. But anyway, it's our only car, and it's what we use out here in the Bow Valley. And so that's a little bit about the background and myself. And so what I'd like to do now is just sort of go back a little bit in history and talk a little bit about where we've come from. Thank you, Julie. So is this a new thing? Electric vehicles, of course, and the answer is no. Before the turn of the last century, right around 1900, there were actually more electric vehicles in North America than there were steam cars. Can't even imagine lighting a log on fire and powering your car with it. But anyway, there were and more EVs than there were gas cars. And you can see the attraction of an EV. In this particular case, I just gotta love this charging station in the picture. It looks like something out of Frankenstein's laboratory. They're much better these days, as you're going to hear from Julie a little later on. And also something I'd like to point out in this picture, which I just sort of noticed the other day, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but if you look in the cab of that electric vehicle, you can see what is a heater, an electric, thank you, Julie, yes, an electric heater down there. And I got to figure that that is something that wasn't in a lot of gas-powered cars back in the day. So a little bit of a perk as it is today in EVs. So yes, back then, electric cars were ubiquitous. Who liked them the best? Women and doctors. Why? Because they always started, and that was crucial for a doctor. You just get in the car, pull the lever, and the car silently drove away. Do you remember how you had to start gas cars back in the day? Pretty crazy. You had to crank them. In February, didn't work so well. And so EVs, again, dead of winter, pull the lever, and the car silently drove away. And of course, one of the biggest advantages with EVs is you can refuel them at home. And there we go. That's quite the home refueling kit there. But nonetheless, it was possible, I guess, back in even those days. So what happened? Why are we not driving around in EVs today? And what killed it the first time? Well, a guy by the name of Kettering actually invented something that used an electric motor, and it was called the starter. A starter motor. And so right away, you didn't have to crank your cars to start them. And the other thing that killed him back in that time was a fellow by the name of Henry Ford. And of course, he's most famous for his Model T. But actually, what he did invent was mass production. And so now his car cost about half the money of any other car on the road, no matter what powered it. So if you're going to go buy a car with your dollars, sadly, he was mass producing gasoline cars. And so the starter and Henry Ford was what did the electric car in the first time. Certainly battery technology was lagging at the time too. There's been 2 other attempts to bring electric cars into modern day. The first one happened back in the 70s. I was alive back then, and the oil embargoes, there was no oil and gas. Sounds sort of familiar. Anyway, and EVs came into the market back then. They were funny looking things and nobody liked them. Didn't last long. The third time it happened was in the 90s. And again, it was all to do with oil and gas. And General Motors brought out a car called the EV1. It lasted a couple of years. And but then again, the taps got turned back on. There was lots of gas. Nobody wanted EVs. And so GM took back all those EV1s and they crushed them. And it spawned a movie called Who Killed the Electric Car? It's a good doc. You can look it up on YouTube. All right, so that's just a little bit of history about EVs. So where are we today? And so, I'm hoping to dispel a little bit, a few myths here and talk a little bit about the modern day electric car. And so, of course, one of the big bugaboos was, well, the car can't go the distance. The battery isn't big enough, etc. And when I first started doing this 10 odd years ago, that was true. The Mitsubishi i-MiEV, the Nissan Leaf, and the Chevrolet Volt. The Leaf and i-MiEV had a range of 135 kilometers, and the Volt went 60. And then its gas generator kicked in. And so, that's a $35,000 car that went 135 kilometers. It's a bit of a tough sell. Can't even imagine what kind of an impact it had out here in Alberta. But now we have a whole slew of cars, and the most modern day EVs will do 400 kilometers quite easily. And so, yes, modern EVs can go the distance. And of course, a lot of people think what you will of the environment, but we all like to save money. And so when you take a look at the fuel costs of an EV, while the upfront capital cost may be a bit more, the fuel cost is certainly inexpensive when it comes to refueling an EV. My Leaf costs about $3.50 to fill it, and it goes 250 kilometers. Even if I were to go 600 kilometers in my Leaf, that's going to cost me under $9. So pretty substantial savings over 4, 5, 7, however long you keep the car. The good news is the further you drive your EV, the more money it saves you. And certainly with gas prices today. Yes, EVs obviously reduce greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of people like to say, well, that just depends on how you're producing the electricity. If you take a look at Canada as a whole, over 60% of our electricity generation in Canada is hydro. Where else in the world do we call our electric bill our hydro bill? Sort of weird. But in BC, it's almost all hydro. Manitoba. Ontario is about 90% emissions free because of nukes and hydro. Quebec, all hydro. Newfoundland, Labrador, all hydro, and lots. To bore it down here in Alberta, of course, not entirely all hydro, and I have a slide in a sec that's going to speak to that. But nonetheless, we still plug into this grid, and it's way cleaner than driving a gas car all the time. And back in the day, 10 years ago, as I alluded to, there were only 2 or 3 modern electric cars available. And of course, that just didn't suit a lot of people. They want a wide range of cars. They want SUVs, sedans, sports cars, minivans, pickup trucks, imagine to have a range of EVs available. So over the last 8 or 9 years, just about everybody out there, every auto manufacturer out there has an EV in their mix. Specifically, the only 2 that are right now missing would be Mazda and Subaru, but even Subaru's partnered up with Toyota, and they're going to build an SUV, which will be out later this year. So in the Canadian marketplace, you'll have a wide range of EVs to suit all kinds of people. Do it. All right, and so a few more myths, might you say? And of course, the upfront capital cost of EVs has traditionally been more expensive, but we do like to take a look at what's called the total cost of ownership of an EV. And when you take a look at 5 years, 7 years, etc., you can see that owning an EV over time is actually way cheaper than owning a gas car, an equivalent gas car. And one of the big components of that upfront capital cost is, of course, that battery. I mean, these are huge batteries. They're the size of your dining room table. and they're hundreds, tens of kilowatts, and they're quite expensive to manufacture, especially since manufacturing capability in the world right now is quite small when it comes to batteries. And just like everything in the world, the first thing you ever make costs $1 million. The millionth thing you ever make costs $1. And so mass production will bring those prices down as we carry on. So battery prices are decreasing. Just recently, we've had an issue, of course, in the world with some shortages and logistics and transportation issues with regards to war and semiconductor shortages. So some of these things are impacting the production of EVs and all cars for that matter. The other piece of it was, well, if I go on a trip, where am I going to charge this car? Of course, charging at home is one of the nicest advantages. But if I do go on a trip, I don't want to spend hours and hours charging my car. So there's a type of charger that Julie's going to explain in a little bit called a DC fast charger. And those are the ones you see out on the road. They're as big as gas pumps and they have huge capacity to charge very, very quickly. 10 years ago, there were hardly any. Now there are literally hundreds and hundreds of them across Canada, which allow you to drive from coast to coast to coast if you wish. A big piece of this technology, of course, with any new technology, people are a little concerned about whether the technology is actually going to work and continue to work. And so what the legacy manufacturers decided to do was offer really solid warranties. And so with all EVs, you get at least a minimum of 8, in some cases 10 years warranty on the battery. And so, even if you're buying a 4 or 5 year old EV and it still has 4 or 5 years of battery warranty left, that's pretty good peace of mind on a new vehicle and certainly on a used vehicle. Speed of charging was always really important. When I'm here at home, I'm plugging into just basically 110 volt wall outlet out in the garage. That's all I need for here. But of course, on the road, I don't want to take, well, it would take almost 35 hours to charge my Leaf on a wall outlet. And that's just not tenable on the road. And so the charger technology has really improved, and we now have super fast charging stations, which, as you can see, can charge in under 20 minutes in some cases. And now we've got range on those EVs as well. So between the charger infrastructure and the range on EVs, I think pretty much a lot of the barriers to adoption have been overcome by technology, and the EVs now work for everybody. Julie. All right, well, let's take a look at what some of those EVs are. And is there something out there for everybody? This is just a smattering of a few of the more modern ones that are out there today. Top left corner is the Volkswagen ID.4, a brand new vehicle from Volkswagen, built from the ground up to be an EV. It's got great range. You get 2 choices of battery size, 400 or 500 kilometer batteries. Underneath that is the red Jaguar. Underneath that is the Kia EV6. And over on the far right corner, you've got the mighty Tesla Model X, which of course Tesla now makes mainstream Model 3 and Model Y SUV, which don't cost $150,000 like that Model X in the picture with the nice Falcon doors. But they do start at a more reasonable price for a premium vehicle like a Mercedes or a BMW. You can pick up a Tesla Model 3 for that kind of money. In the center is the Mustang Mach-E. There was a big calamity about how on earth could they ever call an SUV electric a Mustang, but anyway, nonetheless, marketing's wonderful, isn't it? But of course, I would argue that, and I'm going to show a slide in a sec about EV adoption in the world, but also here in Alberta, and I would argue that one of the reasons why EV adoption here in the prairies and in Alberta has been slow is because the vehicles that were primarily available over the last 8 or 9 years are not what people in this province want to drive. Predominant vehicle, of course, the #1 selling vehicle of any kind in North America is the Ford F-150 pickup truck. And out here, the pickup truck, thank you, Julie, is the pickup truck is just ubiquitous everywhere. I mean, it's a work truck, it's a leisure truck, it's a day-to-day driver. It does everything out here. It tows my toys. It gets me camping. It gets me out with the family. And so if you don't have a pickup truck, then I'm just not interested. I don't care if it's powered by rubber bands. Well, that's all changed. And so just recently, we've had several announcements in the pickup truck side. So I'm going to start with the top right corner, which is the Rivian. Rivian is a startup, came out of darkness about 2 years ago, but actually been around for a while. It's a startup like Tesla. but it's only going to build a pickup truck. And actually they're going to take that truck and turn it into an SUV. So here, and they're marketing it as a lifestyle vehicle. They're not marketing it as a work truck. So this is if you want to go camping, if you want to tow your toys, everything that you know in a lifestyle. And yes, it can be a daily driver too. And it's a beautiful truck. It's just gone into production, and they just started delivering the first ones to their customers in February. So take a look at those stats. So 600 kilometers of range. It has 4 electric motors, 1 for each wheel, although they're mounted inboard, 754 horsepower. This is a serious bad boy truck. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 3 seconds, should you desire. It'll tow 11,000 pounds. That's fantastic. And if you need to, it'll go through 3 feet of water. I don't know, electricity and water don't seem to mix to me, but nonetheless, they've got that figured out. And it doesn't cost $150,000. It's starting at $69,000 US. They are sold out for the next 2 years of production. Amazing. The Chevy Silverado, I don't have a picture of it here, but it's coming. And but even before the Silverado, the GMC Hummer, all electric, a Hummer is gone all electric. It's a massive beast of a vehicle. And then the one in the picture is actually, I think, going to carry on the Ford tradition and be a top seller for them. It looks just like every Ford F-150 out there, but the stats for it are terrific. It's a dual motor, so all-wheel drive. It has great range of over 400 kilometers. You can get a larger battery in it. And it has a tradesman's version. So it's starting at around, I think around 68,000 US. And you can get the tradesman's version. And then of course, if you want, just like any other pickup truck, you can bling it out if you wish. But fantastically capable truck. And it's what people want to drive, especially out here. And I think when these vehicles start to hit, you're going to see a lot of them out here in the prairies and in Alberta. Thanks, Julie. So let's just take a look at sales. I mean, how are things doing in the world? Is this just a flash in the pan, or is it really caught on? Well, as you can see, here's a couple of the top countries in the world. So as a percentage of sales in that country, China is 19%. It's not the highest number there, but then of course, that's the largest auto market in the globe. It's also the largest EV market in the globe. So when we say 19%, that's a huge number of EVs hitting the road. We haven't seen any of the Chinese vehicles in the rest of the world yet, maybe just sneaking into Europe now, but that will happen as well. And as you can see, those numbers climb as we go out through Europe. And I just want to make a quick comment. There's a lot of people say, oh, EV, it's not going to work for me in Canada, it's too cold. Well, look at that. Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, they have the highest penetration of EVs in the world of any country. So I guess they do work in the cold. And there's little old Canada at the bottom with almost 5.5% of new vehicle sales in Canada as being EV or electrified plug-in hybrids as well. And primarily most of those sales have taken place in the provinces with incentives such as Quebec and BC, or provinces which have a large population like Ontario, where they're just naturally selling lots of cars, period. As you can see in the globe, the numbers are quite staggering. This isn't hundreds of cars, tens of thousands of cars. This is millions of EVs being sold globally. And this has just happened in the last 10 years. So you can see the numbers are ramping up rather quickly. Julie? So I grabbed this right off of StatsCan website. I did it about February or March. And the closest look I could get was Q3 of last year. They didn't have Q4's numbers up yet. They may now. And I just wanted to show you, I used BEV is battery electric vehicle and PHEV is plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So these are electrified. These are not hybrids. So if it doesn't plug in, it's not on this chart. And again, there's that 5.4% number down on the bottom right corner. And you can see, almost 24,000 new EVs registered in Canada. And then you can see the breakout by province there. So look over in the top left, you can see 2017, 18, 19, 20. The ramp up has been really, really strong. Let's bring it home here to Alberta. And again, I want to just mention that, if we sold the right vehicle out here that people really wanted, I think we would see an improvement in sales out here. And secondly, if there were some financial incentive to help with that, obviously pickup trucks are more expensive than just sedans. So if there was some financial incentive, like maybe dropping the PST, or there is no PST, maybe dropping the HST or whatever, that might be helpful, or some sort of incentive for them. And overarching over all of this, governments of the world are realizing that they have to step in and help people understand that burning fossil fuel is not going to be the way forward. It's going to take us a little time to get there. It isn't going to happen overnight, not by any stretch. And so you'll see governments and cities basically mandating that by a certain period in time, they will not allow the sale of gasoline vehicles or diesel vehicles. And our own federal government here has mandated by 2035, that will be the year. It's not that far off. Yes, I know governments change. Will it stay in place? We shall see. I would like to say that if the vehicles can prove themselves, and they can prove themselves to be better, a better drive, a better way forward than gas and diesel, then they'll stick around, and we probably will be able to hit those targets. Julie? So another great barrier to adoption is people say, well, there's just not enough electricity. If everybody comes home and plugs in their EV, poof, the lights will go out. Well, of course, as I said, that's just not going to happen, certainly not here in the province of Alberta. There just aren't enough EVs yet, and it's going to take quite a while to ramp up the numbers. Hope through the work of Biosphere that adoption will happen a little bit quicker. But take a look at that chart. So I snagged that right off of the website, February the 10th. And just to explain it a little bit, obviously that's the method of generation down the left side. MC column is the total in megawatts that those sectors are capable of producing. So gas in Alberta can produce, if it had to, if we turned it all on right to 100%, would produce 10,740 megawatts. But on that day, at that time, which is the middle of the day of a work week, it was only needing 6,143. You can take a look now. We've got some hydro in there. I'm quite pleased to say that the Bow Valley is a big part of that out here. Energy storage, solar coming on, a little bit of solar. This was a little bit early in the morning, by the way, and wind. So take a look at wind. I mean, Alberta is actually fantastic for solar and wind. We have huge capability, and more than many other provinces across Canada. Wind rate there that day was 1,656 megawatts, which is actually more than the coal production that particular day. And that coal number there is actually going to be, there's 3 plants left. The Genesee plant's just west of Edmonton. One of those plants is actually already shut down now, and it's going to be converted to natural gas. And in another year or so, there'll be no more coal burned in the province of Alberta to make electricity. So the grid is cleaning up, especially as we add renewables, and we have lots. When you take a look at that chart at night, that's when you plug in your electric vehicle, right? At night, it sits in your driveway. Well, the 9626 is actually much less than that, around 7,000, just depends on the day. So we have lots of power, and it's cleaning up all the time. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, thank you, Ron. Hope everyone can hear me okay.
I'd like to introduce Julie McKenna from Electrify Canada, and it's all about chargers.
Yay, so exciting. Okay. So my name is Julie McKenna, and I'm the manager of site development and construction with Electrify Canada. I'm responsible for a lot of activities at Electrify Canada, so no need to go into detail, but let's just say that my job entails all the things that you are reading in the slide and a few more less tangible activities within the Electrify universe. I thought the best way to focus on the next topics of discussion today would be through the magic of video. This was put together by my colleagues at Electrify America, and it's what we would call a sizzle reel. It gives you the highlights of the business and also what goes into the making of a typical Electrify public charging station, similar to what we had installed at Mr. Tanner's Shops of Canmore. So let's watch, and fingers crossed it works for me.
Electric vehicles, or EVs, are leading the way for a better future. And a big part of advancing electric mobility is the planning and development of conveniently located charging stations. Data and insights help determine where to build charging locations and assure the latest technology is implemented for an enjoyable customer experience. Once a location is determined, permits are secured and construction begins, which includes working with utilities and power companies to tap into the area's electrical grid. Meanwhile, EV chargers are made in production factories and shipped to the chosen locations for installation. With most major car makers developing EVs today, it's important to have chargers that will work with a variety of vehicles. Inside the most innovative EV chargers, cutting-edge software and specially engineered hardware work together quickly and seamlessly to offer broad compatibility now and into the future. Once an EV charger connector is plugged into the vehicle's port, a handshake of sorts is established, and data is shared. This handshake allows the car's battery to request just the right amount of power it needs from the charger. The charger then converts alternate current, AC, sourced from the electrical grid, to direct current, DC, that's stored in EV batteries. While every charging session is unique and complex, rest assured that the right parties have worked together to ensure a successful charging experience. Happy charging.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Kind of summarizes all the things we're going to talk about next. So, how do people charge their electric vehicles? This is a helpful chart that explains the different types of and ways people can fuel their electric vehicles. L2 is a great solution for offices and residential. These don't require a lot of power and they're compatible with the 240 volt outlets found in most households. The units can be hardwired by a licensed electrician. Often rebates are available from provinces or other government agencies, and that's for the cost of and sometimes even the installation of the units. Typically, these charge a vehicle in 8 to 12 hours, and that's why it's great for places you'll be spending significant time at home or in the office. So current typical DC in the field today, which is this one here, ranges around 50 kilowatts, which is fine. It's suitable for most vehicles on the road. This takes about an hour to charge the vehicle, or longer when there's a battery that's larger in the car. Tesla, our third one there, is proprietary, and it's a closed network at the moment, meaning only Tesla vehicles connect to and charge at those stations. Ranging between 75 and 250 kilowatts, the chargers take around 25 to 40 minutes to charge a Tesla vehicle. But the high power charging, which is what Electrify Canada specializes in, provides considerably higher power charging solutions than L2 or even the 50 kilowatt. It's non-proprietary and it's brand agnostic. So the charging solutions are available for the needs of drivers today. And with the power we are able to deliver of up to 350 kilowatts, we're ready to meet the needs of those higher voltage EV batteries coming to the market in the future. This is ideal for those looking to drive longer distances, but not wanting to spend too much of their time fueling. Vehicles can be charged and ready to go within 15 to 30 minutes. It's also an interesting solution for those who live in areas of Canada where they do not have access to L2 charging at their home or their office. They can charge their vehicle while running errands during the week, such as grocery shopping, provided, of course, I've secured a location with a grocery store as a tenant. Here's some of the benefits of EV charging. So for condo developers, it's a way to set your property apart from others and attract tenants who are looking for sustainability as part of their decision-making process. It's also a way to add revenue to your business through cost recovery, like tenants would pay to use and access those chargers. And benefits for tenants and condo owners is you can get that charging at home feeling. And then there's also a potential solution for guests visiting that want to charge their electric vehicles. In some cases, these are networked solutions, and that can also be used to drive people to your property when it makes sense. For retail, EV owners have preferences to combine activities such as running errands and charging their vehicles, and will seek out locations that will allow them to do both. Next slide will take a little bit of a deeper dive into that area. And in some cases, there are potential government rebates available. At the moment, other than the federal incentive for purchasing those actual vehicles, the province of Alberta is not really offering too much, unless you're a municipality. If you're a municipality, the MCCAC has a lovely rebate of up to 100% of the cost of purchasing and installing a new charging station. So that's great because the municipalities can put in public charging stations without having to impact the taxpayers, right? And so this could represent a savings of up to $10,000 for each level 2 charging, or up to $150,000 for each of the fast chargers that they install. So if you're on the line and you work for a municipality and you haven't already taken a look, please, I encourage you to check that out, because that would be a great solution for, the cities and towns that you're representing. So as mentioned earlier, EV charging can drive customers to your properties. So 80% of EV drivers typically like to make a purchase when charging at a retail location. And 66% of EV drivers appreciate the demonstration of commitment to sustainability and may even pay more for products where the commitment is demonstrated. 67% of millennials prefer to shop online rather than in store these days, but I think that number might be higher and maybe impact more than just millennials, given what we've gone through in the last 2 years. With certain network solutions being available to allow you to link amenities to in-store promotions and purchases, this is just one more thing to consider when deciding on EV infrastructure for your property. So you've thought about it and it makes sense to add this as an amenity. But what's next? How does one figure out who, what, where, and when of it all? I like to start with the basics, right? So for us, it's location, 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 and visibility. So we seek out sites that are along popular routes which people travel, and we also like to know if it can be installed at a location on the property that's visible from the entrance. Another thing to consider is power and constructability. Is there enough power available from the utility to add this into the design of your development? And can this be seamlessly integrated into the overall design engineering of the electrical service being provisioned? For properties that are built already and you're considering a retrofit, same questions are applicable, but kind of in reverse order. So for public charging, are there amenities on site? Washrooms, convenience stores, quick service restaurants, etc. Something for people to do when they are stopped. And most important, of course, is access and comfort, right? So is it accessible 24/7? Is it well lit in an open area? This is critical to consider, as people don't really live in a 9-to-5 world these days, and they, make their decisions about when they're going to charge up their car without any real thought about it. So another thing to think about is, here's a basic rundown. Okay, the process involved with installing public infrastructure. From agreement to operation, you find it typically takes about 12 to 18 months to open a charging station. So this is my typical process. Once we've identified a site, negotiated and execute an agreement, we'll conduct a survey based on our initial site plan. And then if all comes back clean, we design and permit the site with the local HJ. Following which we perform the construction, which really doesn't take more than a few weeks on the actual site. And then we'll install the stations and commission the site once it's energized by the utility, which has a tendency to take a little while, but we work really closely ourselves with the utilities to kind of reduce the time that the site is built before a transformer shows up and they energize it for us. And then once the site is open to the public, we'll continue to operate and maintain the installation, as well as provide ongoing customer service for the drivers. This is especially important nowadays when there are so many new EV drivers coming to charge their vehicles, but might not necessarily have taken the training offered, let's say, by the sales consultant when they picked up their vehicle. So I want to share with you now a few tips and tricks to ensure successful EV installation as you make your plans. I would call these lessons from the field. So consider the following, especially for areas where it's planned to be some public use. Lighting is critical in parking areas with the charging. And we've learned through our experience that automakers do not have an agreed to location for the charging port on their EVs. So we make sure that our cables are long enough to suit all makes. Stencils and signage. This is important to identify that the spots are for EV charging only. But if that doesn't do the trick, we also have considered security cameras and have installed a few, as well as signed a really good contract with a towing company. That seems to help when there are significant instances where people are parking but not charging their cars. Also, an important thing to consider is bollards over and above wheel stops in the parking lots. We learned quickly that bollards are best, especially with the higher off the ground vehicles and also when there's snow. This helps protect the equipment from the wayward vehicle impacts that might potentially happen. Beyond these items though, I am of the opinion that a solid operation and maintenance solution is another key component to long-term satisfaction for EV charging installations. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we have in place at Electrify to provide that. So as part of our commitment to quality and customer experience, behind the scenes is our Center of Excellence, which is a controlled Canadian electric vehicle testing environment that's set up with our chargers and where we conduct all sorts of tests. We verify the software, the functionality, app integration, compatibility, etc. On all of our technology is tested here before it rolls out to the actual stations. It allows us to test out the chargers with cars from across all the automakers before they're sent out into the wild. And this ensures that we're being proactive in the customer charging experience and working ahead to mitigate any potential issues between the vehicle and the charger, and as well to rectify them before folks are out on the road and charging up at our stations. All the latest EVs have gone through our center, including the Audi e-tron, the Porsche Taycan, the Ford Mach-E, and the ID.4 to ensure compatibility with the Electrify Canada stations. Because, you know, the automotive manufacturers put their own software into the cars, and we've got our own software. So it's a lot of, you know, fitzing around to make sure that everything is talking appropriately. If you remember the little video I showed about the handshake, this is why this Center of Excellence is very important. You know, you'd be really impressed with the number of technicians with different backgrounds overseeing this testing to ensure top quality and customer service. I've been there, they're all quite lovely. They're a little bit scared of me though, because my personality could be considered a bit different from the colleagues that they work with every day. So one more shameless plug from me, which is that Electrify Canada and America are building the most powerful open fast charging network. We have plans to have over 1,800 stations in operation by 2026. So I guess you could say things are getting pretty serious. I'd like to hand things back over to Ron now to finish off our presentation today. If you're around, Ron. Okay, so
there we go. I'm back,
Oh.
but I need Andrea to unvideo me anyway. But I will speak to the slide that people can see, and there we go. There we go. And I would, you know, since most of the people on the call here today are from the Bow Valley area and Canmore, you know that the currency of the Bow Valley is the natural beauty that is here. The clean water, the fresh air, the beautiful mountains, and the flora and fauna that reside in it are all desirable and what attract people to come to the Bow Valley from all over the world. And of course, a piece of this will be how they travel to the Bow Valley. And right now that's primarily by auto. So as those autos switch fuel to electricity, how are we going to be ready out here to accommodate those drivers, whether they're staying in a hotel or a condo or a resort or a private residence, townhouses, you name it out here, they're all out. All of those types of structures and buildings and retail spaces are available up and down the Bow Valley. And so people are naturally going to be looking for refueling options for their car. And you know, what better optic could there possibly be than EV? You know, no tailpipe means zero local emissions right here in town. We have I'm saying right off the top, plentiful renewable hydro. Of course, I'm talking about the Bow Valley area and the Spray Lakes dams and all the hydro that's generated right here. Theoretically, those electrons go right into those cars. And of course, you want to attract EV owners who, tend to be, when you look at the demographic, they're affluent, well-educated, and they're here to spend some money. And so if I'm choosing as an EV owner, a hotel that has a charger versus a hotel that doesn't have a charger, all things else being equal, I'm going to the one that has one. And so I think, it's a pretty nice story that we write out here when it comes to EVs. And I hope that you see that from Julie and my presentation, that EVs are here to stay, and it will be the future of transportation. And we hope that you'll be able to help us accommodate that as you build or retrofit new and existing buildings. With that, I'd like to turn it back to Andrea, and I think we're going to go to questions.
Great, thank you so much for the presentations. Such a big global look right down to the nitty-gritty details of EV charging. So I hope there was something in there for everyone to learn. Yeah, we have a lot of good time for questions. So if somebody has one, feel free to either pop it into the chat or raise your hand, and I can just help moderate. You can also just flip on your camera and unmute.
I'll go if we don't have one lined up. And I'm not sure who best to answer, but Julie, one of the things that I saw from your presentation was around sort of the process. What if you're a builder, developer, landlord, property owner, what's the sort of number one or number two things that you get hung up on? Like you were saying, sometimes the utility takes a little while to get going, but what are the sort of the standard or typical issues that you come across when you're actually into construction and permitting and all of that kind of stuff?
Well, the easy one is that for me, because I build stations that are super high power charging, there's a lot of shock that ripples into the utility if they haven't seen me before when I ask for a megawatt of power. So that opening picture of me is one transformer for a project we did out in the Milton area in Ontario. It was our very first station. That was a megawatt. It's a good size, but number one is, explaining the amount of power that's needed and why, right? And then number two is, hey, is that amount of power available? And how much is it going to cost to bring it to this property? That being said, those are for fairly large stations, right? If you're looking at an L2 solution, it's the same as, the type of power you would need for a stove, right? That 240 volt, no big deal. You can put a bank of them in there. It's not quite as impactful as, say, a megawatt of power. Like the L2 chargers are usually about under 10 kilowatts. These are 350, so it's a bit intense. Once you're through that, the other thing, because I'm not the property owner myself, when I have these conversations with the utilities and the property owners, because I bring in my own utility service, what sometimes comes about is easements. And that is always a difficult conversation on both sides, but that's one of those top three. Oh my God, how much power do you need? Are you crazy? Can we bring it in? Yes or no? And then what kind of easement would we be up against?
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
We've got one coming in the chat here. What does charging cost per session at the public facilities? So if this is a potential revenue source at multifamily developments, how is it charged? So I'm not sure. Maybe Julie could take that one on, or
Julie, you do the public one, like your chargers, and I'll do the one that's in a condo or in a private or a hotel or something.
Certainly. Okay, so with Electrify Canada, our charging station infrastructure ranges between 27 cents per minute per use and 57 cents per minute per use. Because Canada does not allow for charging per kilowatt hour, we had to come up with kind of like a rate structure of a per minute style. And that per minute solution is based on the battery size of the vehicle connected, right? So it's kind of got a split in there. So, you know, when I borrow the office's Audi e-tron GT, which is a very large battery, very nice vehicle, it costs me about 20 bucks to get to 80% of charge, which is pretty good considering an Audi typically requires supreme, you know, unleaded gas if you're not driving an EV. And I've seen the prices these days of gas, it's pretty grim. So overall, you know, the cost of charging the EVs these days is very, very competitive. In fact, it's pretty beneficial to drive an EV these days. Did I answer that part of the question okay, Ron?
Yeah, and I guess, you know, with the level 3s, the DC quick chargers out in the public domain, speed is what people are looking for, and they're prepared to pay for speed. Just like we have regular gas, mid-grade, and premium gas, we have speeds on these chargers. So if you're being billed by the minute, you want to be charged as quick as possible. You might be prepared to pay a little bit more per minute for that. Of course, that's when you're out on the road and you're just pulling off the highway. But what about if you're in a condominium, or you're at a hotel or resort, and they have chargers there? Again, as Julie indicated, for the most cases, they're not, well, definitely, they're not allowed to charge by the kilowatt hour, which would be ideal. And we hope we see that change in the future. Because, I mean, you know, it's silly. Why would we pay for a gas pump? Well, if you're on a gas pump for 2 minutes, you pay by the minute for pump gas, right? And so why wouldn't you bill by the kilowatt hour? But again, it's billed by the minute, or it's flat on. So at resorts and places where you're traditionally parking the car for a number of hours, where you go to lunch or stay overnight or go golfing or whatever, there usually is a flat rate. So it'd be like $1 or $2 to plug in and charge up your car while you're at that facility. If it's your own private residence, then, and I don't know if you can maybe pull it up, Julie, but that one slide near the end, one of those two that you kept, the one that shows the install in the basement of a condo, and it shows the type of technology which is available. And this is a big deal when you're building, you know, a building which is going to have maybe 300 parking spaces. Are you going to electrify them all to be available with 220 volts, 40 amps? That's a lot of power going out to every single spot in the building. Probably the answer is you're going to start off doing something a little smaller and maybe only do 10 or 15 spots at once. So this is a technology solution. You recognize Eaton at the bottom of the box, so that's a fairly recognizable name. And this is a special panel that they've built. And what it basically does is a whole bunch of things at once. So the first thing it does is distribute power to all of the chargers that you would have installed, or at least the sockets that are out in the parking spaces. At 15 at a time, it can expand beyond that. And then the other thing it does is load share. So not everybody needs 32 amps right now. I mean, they're charging overnight while they're at home, so maybe they only need to distribute maybe 16 amps or even less overnight to make sure that by the next morning, all the cars that are plugged in are fully charged. So it does load share. The second thing it does is billing. So inside each of the boxes are individual revenue grade meters. And so now in this particular case, they can bill by the kilowatt hour because that would be preferable. And so these revenue grade meters are accessible via software. So the whole software suite attached to it for the owner of the building to access for billing purposes. And then for each individual who has a parking spot with a charger, they can also access their own circuit and turn it on and off, see how much energy they've used, all that kind of good stuff. And then the whole thing is tied up with cloud support. So it's attached to Ethernet or Wi-Fi and can drive that, all that information and data either to the building owner or the individual EV owners. So this is more of a solution for a multi-unit residential building, and of course would be part of the cost of building the building. And it's the cheapest power that people are going to buy is at home. So when they plug it into a wall outlet or they plug it into a 220 socket, that's at home. that is the cheapest power that they're going to have access to. When they're out on the road, that's the most expensive power they're going to have access to. But then, of course, they're paying for the speed so that they can plug in, go have something to eat, or go for a quick walk, come back, the car's charged, and move on their way. So you're prepared to pay for speed. I hope that's a little bit helpful on the overall piece of it.
Yeah, I think so. Our next question is taking a bit of a different turn. And Ron, I think this probably goes to you, although Julie, feel free to jump in as well. Someone's mentioning what you said, that the EV batteries are good for 8 to 10 years, or that was the warranty number you referenced. The question is, are lithium batteries recyclable? And what do you think of the impact of that amount of lithium extraction on the environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'll try and keep it really short. Reader's Digest, elevator version. First of all, oil and gas, once it's burned, it's not recyclable. It's gone forever, and we have to go get more. The cool thing about batteries is, yes, there's an impact on the environment to mine them. Right now, the transportation, logistical infrastructure in the world, ships, trains, planes, everything is powered by fossil fuel. So the carbon footprint of bringing lithium from Bolivia to Japan to turn it into a Panasonic battery that goes into a Toyota and then gets put on a fossil fuel boat that gets shoved across the ocean. I mean, that is the same for any car, whether it's electric or gas. That's pretty much what happens. But the good news is that first, the batteries are recyclable. And there's a number of companies that have been starting up in the last little while. And actually, that's going to happen right here in Canada too. And these are huge plants. And not only are they going to take our laptop and cell phone lithium-ion batteries, but they're going to take these giant tabletop-sized batteries. And when the car is finally done, that battery is going to go to the plant, and it's going to be put through a shredder, and all the products that went to make that battery in the first place are going to come back out. And so while it did have a carbon impact to mine those products, now that we can recycle them, and that's what we need to do in this world, isn't it? We need to get cycles happening. That's how nature works. Everything goes round and round. It's just us, mankind, that really hasn't been very good at that. But we can do it with lithium-ion batteries. We can make this stuff go round and round, and it could go and produce either a new battery or part of a new battery. And so from a recycling perspective, it's a good story for EVs. And of course, what will probably happen to an EV battery is it will be repurposed before it's recycled. So right now, here in the province of Alberta, you saw in my chart, there was energy storage in the generation side. Those right now are big, giant batteries. Where did they come from? Well, in some particular cases, they might have been old EV batteries, which, like a 60 kilowatt EV battery, when it gets down to below 30 kilowatts and capacity, it's not good for a car anymore, but it still has 30 kilowatts of capacity and could be used for storage. So you're going to find batteries repurposed first, and then once they're done, they're going to go and be recycled, and all the components of that battery are going to go back into the chain and go back out there to do the work, which means less of an impact on the mining side to produce all of those materials. Hope that was short enough.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I don't know if I don't have any more questions coming in. If you do have one though, please pop it in. We can answer a couple more. I know it is getting on 1 o'clock Mountain Time here, so some people may have to run off to other meetings. Our speakers have kindly offered to stay on if we do have questions, but if not, we can just wrap it up. So I'll give it another couple minutes. I will also put in our survey in the chat. So we were interested in knowing what you learned today, and also to help us sort of improve our presentations for the future. So please fill that out. You will be entered to win a prize. We have a home energy efficiency prize pack, which is worth $500 as a bit of an incentive to enter that draw to fill out the survey. I'm seeing some thank yous come into the chat. Thank you so much. I hope everyone learned something today. And I guess if there are no more questions, we will probably wrap it up. Julie, Ron, did you have any last words to say to our guests today?
I want to give a shameless plug for the Biosphere, the event which is coming up at the end of May right here in Canmore. that is going to be, I'm going to say a first that I'm aware of, where the EV Expo right at the Elevation Place parking lot. Come on out and meet EV owners from all over, ask questions, kick tires, and I'll be there, and I hope to see you folks there as well. It would be a great opportunity to talk to you about EVs.
Yeah, I'll second that emotion. I might not be there because I got to go other places, but I'll tell you guys, once you put your bum in the seat of an EV, that's going to be the big change for the experience for you, because these little vehicles, they've got some torque and they go. And it's not just from a environmental sustainability perspective. It's like, these cars are cool, they're fun to drive, and frankly, there is nothing more satisfying than beating a Dodge Charger off of the red light, okay? Up in Bolton, Ontario, driving an ID4. That, primo. So, always something to think about. Always go try out the vehicles and have some fun, because they are fun.
Great message. And I have been seeing so many electric vehicles, and I've been noticing them. I don't know if it's just because there's more of them or because I've been noticing more, but something to keep your eyes out for on the roads. And yeah, get yourself in one as well.
Annabelle's got a question.
We've got one more question. Annabelle, you can feel free to speak up if you like. Turn on your camera. Nope.
She did have her hand up.
She did have her hand up.
There she's
Oh.
unmuted now.
There you are.
She was just typing. Okay, in terms of the Canadian winters, how well do EVs start up and run? I mean, both of you, I think, are EV owners, so you could talk from experience.
Well, Ron's got an amazing little video that talks about EV owners, especially like specifically in Canmore area, right? About winter. But it's something like, guys, look, they start up fine. There really are no issues in my experience. Similar to, this is something that people don't necessarily talk about, but do you know that you lose range in a gas-powered vehicle in cold weather? You lose about 15 to 20% of range. Just because it's cold, it takes more gas to power it and keep it moving. Similar, while they pointed out a little bit more that you lose so much range when it's cold weather, it's pretty close to equivalent of range loss when the weather is cold. So always keep that in mind. You know, you don't lose too much. The cars are great. And, you know, I know for a fact, because one of my good friends was in the product planning for the VW ID4, they made sure to put a little heat pump into the vehicle, because Canada needs some special equipment, and most automakers with the EVs have been appropriately preparing for that. So you shouldn't have any issue. Ron, you can confirm or deny that.
No, it's so true. I mean, it's like anything else. We grew up with gas cars, and so we just know how to do that. You know, we just learn by osmosis, and we don't notice the 20-25% loss when it gets down to minus 20 degrees in a gas car, because we just fill the tank up again. And the same thing really applies to an EV. Yes, it can lose up to maybe 30-40% of its range because it's so stinking cold. I mean, I was in Edmonton over Christmas, sadly. It was minus 37. But having said that, the EV will always start. So that's a nice benefit. Secondly, my favorite benefit of an EV is the ability to precondition it before I go. So whether it's parked out in the driveway or it's parked in the garage, it's plugged in. And my car doesn't even need to be plugged in. I can do it either way. I can do it from an app on my phone. I just tell it to turn on the heater. And that heat pump that Julie mentioned will now heat up the interior of my car. It'll turn on my bum warmer. It'll turn on my heated steering wheel. It'll turn on my heated mirrors and my heated rear window defrost. And so when I'm at home, I have a beautifully preheated car, so that now when I go out into the minus 20, I'm not cranking the heat and sucking the battery down, because the car is already warmed up and ready to go. In many cases, a lot of these EVs will also precondition the battery and warm it up, either with a heated water circulating or with the little heating elements that go through it. And so that again impacts the ability of the car to ward off the cold effect. And just because we have builders on the line, I want to throw one more thing out there. And one of the things I noticed here in Canmore is a lot of the condos and buildings here have heated underground parking. Well, that's awesome. I mean, if you can get the car into the underground, now the car thinks it's still in Florida. So, you know, that has a big impact on the range that you're going to start the day with. Now, at some point, you got to face up. If you're out all day and you park the car at the ski hill and it's not plugged in, it's sitting out there cold soaking in -20 while you're gone skiing for 5-6 hours. So yes, you're going to have to face up to that. But as you're coming down the ski hill, you can get out your app and you can turn on the heater in the car, and it'll be all nice and cozy warm for you when you get there. That's an awesome benefit. And if it's plugged in, then of course you're using the grid power to power that car, both the heat and to charge it. So that's, we need that infrastructure, Julie.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Well, and that is actually, we have one more question, which I think Julie can speak to, which is how many charging stations are planning to be built across Canada and the US by 2026? And I'm assuming this person's asking not just about Electrify Canada, but
Well, I'd
all of
rather
the
just
other-
electrify Canada and electrify America, because that's an answer I can give you. Between Electrify America and Canada, we're going to have 1,800 stations in operation, 100 of which will be up here in Canada. So I guess like the remainder at piddly 1,700 out of the US. That being said, different demographic, different population distribution. So we're starting to go coast to coast, get all the provinces in there, right? And allow everybody to get to where they need to go across the Trans-Canada Highway, and then I will backfill as needed.
And of course, we've got others as well that are infrastructure out there. So there are private networks like Flow and ChargePoint, which have been out there for a number of years. And these are dedicated. Flow is actually a Canadian company which has put networks across, done work with BC. So you see lots of Flow chargers in the BC network, the Peaks to Prairies network. And then the fossil fuel guys are starting to get involved too. So the first one out of the gate was Petro-Canada, and every 200 kilometers right across the country, they put 2 DC fast chargers at the Petro-Canada gas station. I mean, I need the same things as a gas. I want to clean my windshield. I want to put air in my tires. I want to go to the washroom, and I want to pick up something to eat. And I'm pretty sure all those stations can do that. And so why wouldn't I want that as an EV owner? Shell Recharge Network is going in. They're a little slow, but they're getting there. I noticed there's one all booted up and ready to go in Cochrane, just down the road from me, and many others coming. So how do you find these chargers? There's an app for that, of course. It's called PlugShare. It's a free app. It's a free download. You put it onto your smartphone, and it shows you a map, and it shows you all the chargers, puts you in the middle of the map and shows you all the chargers around you. If you're traveling to a different area, you can actually look at that area before you get there and see the Electrify Canada stations that are right across the country, and plan to use one of those. Because why would I pick Electrify Canada? Well, they don't just put in one charger, not just 2 chargers, but usually a minimum of 4, right, Julie? And so if I'm going to go to a spot, I want to have a good chance of arriving there and not have to wait my turn. And so far, that has been the case. I have never in 10 years of doing this had to wait my turn at a station. Maybe I just got lucky, but I also plan my route and pick my stations like Electrify Canada. So that's what we need. We need more and more of that infrastructure. Right now, there's enough to support the EVs in the marketplace. Tesla, of course, knocks it out of the park. They don't, and in Canmore alone, there are 2 Tesla supercharging stations. One at the Boston Pizza and one across the street at the hotel, which the name escapes me at the moment, but there's 4 of them around the back. Canmore is a fantastic waypoint. If I'm traveling from the east and coming through into the mountains up to Lake Louise or on through into BC, stopping at Canmore is fantastic. Shops at Canmore, there's 4 there. The Petro-Can up at the top of the road has got 2. The Tesla superchargers, there's the one Flow charger right in town at the municipal lot, and as well as a level 2 and a couple others. So it's a super spot here in the Bow Valley, but nothing much up at Lake Louise. Last time I went to the lodge up there, they wanted $30 to park. I got free EV charging, but $30 to park. Have a nice day. So we need a little bit more out there. We'll throw that over to Julie, and maybe she can help us out with some.
I'm doing my best. It's a lot of work. We're getting on it. And the more people that are as enthusiastic as you, Ron, and support EVs, and the more automotive manufacturers produce and get the product here to Canada, the more likely I will have the ability to build more stations, because it's great for everybody and it's important. And it's fun.
Awesome. Great. Well, I think that's all for today. So I think we will wrap up, but thank you so much to Ron and Julie for answering those last couple of questions. And it was so nice having you and learning some things. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a good afternoon.